Welcome back. We are going to have an interview with our guest that is an in-house guest on AI, art, and intellectual property. The legal implications of using generative AI is in creative industries are still unclear, particularly in relation to copyright infringement, ownership of AI-generated works, and unlicensed content in training data. Claims of authorship and ownership of AI-generated art can be hazy as to the overall project, but are typically crystal clear with respective to each of these elements. High and federal court cases have reinforced the copyright can only be awarded to a person who produces a work of independent intellectual efforts, while highlighting the requirements that the work originates with an author or joint authors. And to have this conversation, around arts, AI, and intellectual property, in the guests we have Engineer Nzube Ndiokwelu, who is a community lead and Citra,
Yes,
Citra Nigeria. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much.
First of all, we keep talking about AI. I know art, we have like the basic knowledge of what art is. Intellectual property, we do AI. It's like we just woke up and we are being introduced with something that is so big, something as deep as the ocean, and we don't even understand it, but we keep using it because it makes things easy. Can you like give us a breakdown of what AI is actually, the artificial intelligence?
Okay, thank you very much. AI is a field of is a multidisciplinary field of computer science, and AI has already been here with us for such a long time, but we actually don't always see it as AI. And right now, it's the new form of AI that we now attach as the AI we now know. So, for example, we've had machine learning for such a long time, and we've had deep learning and natural language processing, and these are also different forms of artificial intelligence. So, for example, the recommendation engines that you have on your Netflix and your Google searches are being run by machine learning. You get machine, they run on data and without any pre-trained alignments being done to it. So that's AI to you. So we've already been accustomed to, we've been introduced to this artificial intelligence gradually, and as the technology improved and the discipline advanced, then we now have these generative pre-trained models which now give rise to the everyday usage now we now have now, like ChatGPT
And the rest of it. Okay, so how do you perceive the relationship between traditional art forms and AI generated art?
First thing is art is an expression, a means of expressing one's thoughts, creativity, and it's been done for time immemorial. I believe in the early days of what we may not even yet understand now. We had prehistoric arts, which you could see in the cave walls and the cave paintings, and then in the hieroglyphics that we saw in the Egyptian caves and all those pyramids. So that's actually art being expressed on a different form, which is on a concrete medium, which is like
By
on
man
rock.
itself.
Yeah, by man on rocks. And then we now had the advent of paper and the different ways of actually canvassing.
Yes,
So we
putting
now
things down.
actually moved art from being sculpted on and then moved into different forms like canvases. And now I feel that with the advent of AI, we'll probably just have art, being expressed in a new form, and we must get used to, having to see this perceived shift. And this shift is something that people are not yet already, getting used to. But with time, we'll get used to the fact that art could be now in a digital form, no longer in a physical form. Like I said, the medium could just simply be what is changing. Previously, we had arts being inscribed on the walls in the caves. Now we had arts being drawn on canvases, and this happened for thousands of, so like for hundreds of centuries, and then like not like hundreds, but tens of centuries, and then
Just
and
to
then
make
yeah, then from then we now have art being expressed in the digital digital form now.
Okay, so in the aspect of intellectual property, who should have ownership of this particular artwork? Is it the AI itself, or is it the person that actually owns the AI, or even the person that instructed this AI on what to do?
To be quite frank, these are where we now need guidelines and regulations, and having the different governments step in to create clear understanding around this, because I mean it's quite ambiguous. Who owns it? The prompter, the data that which the AI models are being trained on, or actually the person that actually gave the instructions. So these are actually really complex issues that we still have to navigate, because currently art in this new era would evolve. And when it evolves, we'll probably not actually have to be having discussions around this, because you see, personally, like I said in the previous interview when I came here last time, NFTs are a way to
I was going to highlight something on NFT concerning this.
So NFTs are actually a way to actually evolve this form of ownership, so that you can now have digital provenance. So this way now you can first of all be able to prove that this was created by this person. And when we get to that line of discussion, we can now start having deeper discussions over who then owns the intellectual work there. The data which it's being trained on, the person giving it the instruction, and then also, what is the new form of art? We might simply still be imagining art with the traditional forms of creation, which is actually, we actually
things down.
Thank you very much.
Or has it really evolved from that?
Thank you. So art could simply, in a digital world, could be something new. So for example, right now, if we take a look at what has been the most expensive artworks or the collectibles that we had in this past era, they were not actually like, artworks that had been as popular or groundbreaking like the Mona Lisa and Van Gogh's paintings. We've had more of collectibles being quite very expensive. Marvel comics have been very, very expensive. People have been collecting cartoons from the 80s. People have been collecting LA works, and even baseball bats, and even in sports. So this has actually been things that people have been collecting. And, when time goes on, you could look back and say, this is the art of this age. Because what people collect and is a shared memory. People have an attachment to it or a sentiment towards this, so they could define it as the art of that age. And in this our current age, my intuition is that we could have art revolving around games.
Around games?
Yeah, because more of what has defined this current generation has been video games. And NFTs have been things that are going to be groundbreaking when inserted into games. Those characters can now be able to evolve. And when they evolve, they could simply, within the game, produce a work which could be valuable. And that value could be what is now being attributed to that entire collection of people playing those games. So imagine previously you could have, let's say, Cristiano Ronaldo winning the Champions League. The picture that won him the Champions League becoming something that he decides to say, thank you very much, I'm going to sell this. And thousands of years to come now, people are going to hear the legendary exploits of somebody named Cristiano Ronaldo and not be able to wonder how they were even playing football. Because we're probably having robotics and a whole lot of things. The world is going to be a lot different in that era. And you will see that there will be value in that art, which is going to be ascribed to.
Just as we value things from the Egyptian era.
Thank you.
From their pyramids, even their tomb and the rest of it.
Thank you very much. Recall, Da Vinci, that's actually, the father of the modern day art renaissance, actually is somebody that you could liken to a polymath. He dabbled a lot in science. He actually helped in the restoration of buildings. He was more of like an architect. And it's what actually made his works actually valuable, because he contributed not just to art, but also to science and to also the general society. So he was very much revered in many ways beyond what we actually assume today.
Interesting. Still on intellectual property. if an artwork is being put out there, and most times not all artists are really famous in quotes, if you agree with me, how do we keep this artwork original to this artist? How do we pay, not pay per se, but if we're going, if this artwork is going to be appreciated, if it's remoderned with an AI app or whatsoever, an instruction, how can this still remain original to this particular artist that owns it?
Okay, so as the technology has been evolving, we are going to be seeing new methods of verifying where the origin of a work came from. Do you get? So we're going to have the ability for the AI models to actually have embedded codes which are going to indicate that this is actually an AI generated work, and most likely is going to attribute that this was actually modeled after this.
Most times you see this artwork and they appear so real. I kid you not. There are sometimes that you'd see, like there was one advert that I saw online. It was Wole Soyinka. He wasn't the one that did that advert. He had no idea, but he was on screen.
Yeah.
He was on all platforms advertising a drug that he has no idea about. And you see people commenting and possibly buying it because this figure here is someone that we trust,
yeah,
and we feel like is real. So these things are even looking more real than you even expect.
This is why we're in a new paradigm. Trust but verify. It's a new paradigm, and we must, it's the reason why I keep coming to programs like this, to ensure that we sensitize the audience, because the world is being reshaped in our very fronts, and new things are going to be possible, things we just never imagined. You know, just like you said, you can simply just give it a prompt, and it's able to replicate a work that is actually, you know, it's actually very, very, very like a duplicate. So at the end of the day, the new devices we're going to have, the hardware, every single thing is going to have to align to this new era, where we must be able to verify the source or provenance of every single work that we see. There's going to be fakes, there's going to be imitations. There could actually legitimately be an interview of you and I having this AI generated, and we're having something else being said. Do you get? So, but how do we then now say that this is the real version and this is the fake version? First things first, you're going to see the big IT companies or the tech companies are going to have to bring out a means to, you know, regulate these things, and this is where we now have to start wondering, are they becoming too powerful? Is this not a role that is meant to be handled by the government and, you know, the relevant
regulation body?
Thank you very much. So, for example, now there are different you know, understandings around fair use for copyright items in different countries. So, for example, in Japan is seen like the AI heaven because they have a permissive use on data. You know, so data,
AI itself has a permissive use on data.
Your ability to train or utilize publicly collected data in Japan, you have a permissive use. Really? Yeah. So, but in United Kingdom, you have something called the fair use also, which, you know,
limited.
Thank you very. It's limited, but it allows you. I think the new AI Act being passed now.
Is that even supposed to be allowed?
Well, many of these laws were passed before this new era.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So we are just walking into
thank
an
you.
already established law.
So the AI Act that is being introduced by the United Kingdom is going to have to now address this gap. And at the same time, Nigeria also is already also addressing these gaps with the data constraints, and also ensuring that we secure our data. Because this is one of the most important things that we must be able to take a look at and say, in this new era, where does the data come from? How do we verify that this data comes from our own land, or is this data being fed into our country?
So to what extent do you think a human should contribute to a particular artwork, AI generated in quotes, before you can claim ownership of this thing? Because I believe originally is not even your idea to start with. You don't put in so much hard work, you just instruct it. So to how many, like, to what extent are you supposed to contribute to this artwork before you can claim ownership of it?
When it comes to art, what really ascribes value to art isn't just necessarily the amount of hard work being put into it. It's not necessarily the creativity of the artists. It's not necessarily, how much is being perceived. Like they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So when it comes to art, there's so many different factors which actually allows an artwork to actually be valuable and have a huge valuation. And one of these things come with a story around it. How is it created? The artist, like Van Gogh has the famous, he chopped off his ear. Da Vinci has the famous Antichrist ascribings and the drawings he had, which, there was something mysterious about the artist. So at the end of the day, there's always that human presence which contributes to the story. Because that's the real jig in it. Because there could be thousands of works that are created, near similar artworks, but at the end of the day, it's the story behind the artwork or the work that are actually being created, which actually then now becomes something that other people can now look to it and ascribe value to this and say, yes, I want to have this. So what will make you want to have something depends on perhaps the amount of, work being put into it, the story behind the artist, and the techniques being used to create it. So as much as the AI could actually simply create it by itself or tell an agent to create this, it still requires a human to actually provide that guidance.
On what to create.
Thinking, and to also interpret what was done. Because you see, the AI creates the artwork, it still takes a human to tell you that the story behind this artwork or what led to this.
There's this artwork that it was in 2019, sometime last year, was sold for millions of dollars. Let me tell you, the artwork.
The Banksy?
No, it wasn't. You'll be really surprised. It was banana duct tape art.
Oh.
I was so furious when I saw I keep talking about, I was so furious when I saw it. I'm like, what form of creativity do we ascribe to this?
Okay, so personally, this is my own personal opinion. So I feel like this is the lack of creativity or like the fall of creativity that we've been
its peak.
Thank you very much. So we've had creativity and art expression been on a good trough since, like, let's say the 14th century, and when you got to like the 21st century, we already like at the bottom of the cycle. So at the end of the day, you're going to see that AI is going to allow more people express themselves. You're going to see more creators. You're going to see more artists, because it's going to unleash that latent creativity which a whole lot of people have been restricted to, thanks to the fact that they've not had the training or they do not have the tools. So right now, from your own garage or from your own office or your personal device, you can experiment with different art styles, different art forms, and it could serve as a form of inspiration for artists to now then create physical works. Okay,
let's talk about the I don't want to use like the word war, because it's going to be sort of that, where artists that take their time, they are really creative, they burn the candles to put up amazing pieces out there, and seeing that someone is using an AI to generate artworks, do you think there's going to be some sort of disagreement between this party? Because we'll still appreciate the ones that they do originally on canvas and the rest of it, but using an AI is like an easy access to it. It's something that happens under seconds, right? Do you think there's going to be some sort of controversy between this party?
The competition is coming. That's what I'm going to tell anybody that has that sort of like concern. The competition is coming, and you're going to have more people creating alongside you. And it's something that we're going to have to leave to the audience to then decide who then is the person that has the value that comes to these artworks being created. So at the end of the day, you're going to see more people being able to create metal works, sculptures, canvas works.
That takes months.
Thank you very much. So at the end of the day, it's a question of, are you going to embrace the new tools that are available to you, or are you going to see these tools as limiting to what you do? But at the end of the day, we're going to have a whole lot more people coming into that profession and redefining what it means to create art. So if we had a small set of people creating because they hone their skills and on this work, we're still going to have thousands of people being introduced into this new era of art, and we're going to have people that will hone their skills over countless hours, burn the candles, and produce incredible work using these modern tools.
Will they be equally appreciated?
Like I said, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So at the end of the day, being appreciated, it's still left to the people in the public to decide what are they going to appreciate as modern day art or not. So let me give you an example now. Woodwork seems like a fading skill. Pottery feels like a fading skill. Sculpting also feels like a fading skill. I mean, it's not like you don't have people that are actually good at this or people that do it, but do you have the same level of perfection that you had in the 80s? I mean, take a look at the sculptures or the artworks that you see before. You see that there's much more detailed. There's
stories to tell.
Thank you very much. There's a whole lot behind the art. Now, we are much more superficial on things. And this could not be actually, it could also not be a challenge with the artists themselves. It could just simply be that they are not able to be rigorously trained to actually, express themselves better as people that used to produce art in the previous...
Or are they just lazy?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say lazy, because you see, these things, like I said, it's being watered down, like we're at the end of an era in art. Because if you had that banana duct tape on the wall being sold for millions of dollars, I mean, that is the basic way of saying we are lacking creativity. This is like the end of creativity, and we don't know what else to do. So we must be able to channel our inner creativity and express the current era. Because you see, right now, the era defines the type of art that should be produced. And whether we are going into a post-labor economy or we are still going to remain in this era that we are in, our art should also reflect our realities, because this is then what makes people look at it and say, okay, yeah, there's something really incredible to this.
Irrespective.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think the general public should actually perceive AI-generated art? Rather, how do you think they perceive AI-generated art? Because you have an idea of these things,
yeah,
to a large extent, right? But people like us, the common man that are not so conversant with these things, how do we always perceive it?
I own an AI art gallery. So I started this because there's something really particular about this particular niche and this question you asked.
Is there like a stigma?
Not exactly. We've always loved generated artworks. We've always been consuming generated artworks. More often than not, if you walk down the streets of the many modern metropolitan cities in Africa or Nigeria, you'd see artworks being sold along the road. 90% of the time, they are actually internet-generated images.
Exactly.
So there are not actually original artworks that you are actually really purchasing. And people actually, there's a demand for that. The demand comes from people who want affordable artworks. There's a huge premium on human-generated art. So thanks to the fact that people can easily just purchase something that is much more affordable and they can hang it on their wall, and it feels, and gives them the same aesthetic and feeling that an original would actually do. So you see that it's already been introduced into our populace for a long time. Generated artworks. Right now, you now have the ability to say, I want to customize it in my own style. I want it to be in this way. So for example, let's use let's say use the chicken, which is a popular, the fowl, like the Igbo chicken, which is something really popular. You could really say you want to have an Igbo chicken drawn for you, but using an impasto style, which is an art technique, which uses paints in a different manner, like as if you're rubbing it on the artwork, and it feels really like as if it's...
If you touch it,
yeah, if you touch it, you have to touch it to really know that this is actually AI generated. So at the end of the day, there are some things we can actually get out of this. When people actually say they want to deepen the arts, using generative AI, you can get some wins out of this. You can get customized artworks, you can get low-cost artworks, you can have things that resonate to your own taste. Because you see, more often than not, when people draw artworks, it beckons on the artist to interpret and tell you, this is what I drew. And we then form a consensus around what that person drew. Think about it. When you have an AI-generated artwork, I can basically tell you that this artwork you're looking at is a product of this instruction, and that this is what I conceived, and this is what I really wanted to get out of this model, and out of the different works that this model produced, this particular one that I'm looking at best describes what I'm trying to convey to you. So at the end of the day, you see that there's a different power that comes with AI-created artworks, which traditional artworks actually don't really have. Yeah. So like I said, when you see an
abstract... Is it when you see it, or you can describe, can you like describe it?
Like the example I just gave now is succinct. If you take a look at any traditional artwork, if I ask you what is in this artwork, you most likely say the author or the artist say that this is what, or this is how you interpret this.
Your own.
Yeah. But irrespective of your own interpretation, what then, what's the authentic way of knowing what the artist really wanted to convey? Because more often than not, people produce certain things out of luck, yeah, and then they tell you that this is what I drew. There are a lot of people that come to tell me that this artwork that I'm looking at is what they drew, and I'm like, are you really sure this is what you had in mind, or you're interpreting the output of what you've already drawn? So at the end of the day, not being able to say that this is exactly this, it's something that you can actually really get in an AI, generated artwork. Like, this is just an example. There's so many other things that you can actually look towards that. But in defense of the traditional artists, it takes a lot of ingenuity, a lot of crafts, being able to blend the colors, being able to blend the techniques, the different styles, to create something really novel. And we should really, give it up to them. Honestly. And I still do. But like I said, in this new age, we should see AI like a tool in art, especially in the arts sector. They shouldn't see AI as an enemy. Thank you very much. It's just a new tool for you to create something new. So for example, when it comes to sculpting, a lot of the sculptures we may see in Enugu State, we have the Otigba, we have the tree monkeys around the Bricks State,
the lion,
we have the lion, and we could actually have precision sculpting being done by robotics, and this robotics.
Is that where the 3D painting comes in?
Thank you very much. Yeah. So, thank you very much. So you can actually have something that is much more closer to techniques that we've lost in the past. I mean, there are so many techniques like art forms which we basically can't necessarily blame the artists of this generation, because these are not the predominant techniques of our time. But we can bring back some of these techniques, like our bronze sculpting, which we did in the past, the marble carvings, and then also we could metal sculptures, and woodwork. This can actually be done using precision devices like robotics, guided by the artificial intelligence to produce something which you could actually literally describe, design, and conceive using an AI, and then turn that design into something in the physical world.
Interesting. This can go on. I mean, there are so many angles where AI.
Yeah, so when we look to it as something we have to embrace, I always encourage us to be ahead of the curve. Embrace these tools. I prefer to call them tools because they evolve as they are. But at the same way, you had a hoe, and you had a tractor, and you have a brush and a pencil. This is just a new tool. And this tool is going to be embedded in our everyday life, our devices, and the way we work. So we're just going to, remodel our society after these new tools. That's just it.
I mean, yeah, this is really, I just find it really interesting because before now, I always felt like AI is the enemy. Every time they keep preaching about embracing, I just feel like we're feeding these things information. What if one day it gets used against us, like we see in the movies?
It can. It certainly can. it's good that we also take a look at the drawbacks and be ahead of it. Like I always preach, we can't let what we don't know be the failure or downfall of us. That's basically just ignorance. The first thing we have to do is to ensure that we safeguard our data. Data is the lifeblood of artificial intelligence.
But these things have access to your devices.
You can decide to opt out. Like for example, in the European Union, you can opt out of sharing your data with these AI models, and you can decide to say you want to share your data. So these are certain things that we can proactively, place guardrails around. We basically have to understand that it's going to proliferate and enter every single, the Tesla cars, they all have like vision connected to that. So they're seeing real world data. Your phones are listening to you. Your devices, I have a smartwatch. We have a whole lot of these technologies around us, and they have the ability to collect data from us. Thank you very much.
Just like you mentioned the Tesla car, there was one time I was on Instagram and I saw someone walk a robot dog.
The Unitree.
Yes, it makes sense if you're walking an actual dog, but why do you need to walk a robot on the streets and have it? If he was even trying to attack like a different dog entirely, and it was funny because you're not real, so why do you try so hard? Like, I know that the essence of all these things is because we need money. If it's not because of money, then artists will not be doing artists will not even be working and trying to make amazing pieces to sell. So when it comes to the aspect of finance, AI generated art, if it becomes more prevalent in the society, how do you predict like the market value compared to the traditional art?
In the traditional art, the most expensive pieces tend to come by consensus, or the top institutions like the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian Institute actually, auction some of the most expensive art pieces that you have in the world. And the consensus that you tend to find around some of the older artworks comes from, the elite of the society being able to say, okay, yes, there's something we find really valuable in this. So as we move forward, first thing, art is going to be secured on the digital blockchain known as NFTs. So these artworks that are now going to be residing either on our phones, tablets, or new computing devices that are going to come out, you are going to now have a form of consensus being reached by the general public. So for example, in the niche area where I talked about in games, let's use something really popular. Football. A huge population of the country or the population all around the world play football. And we could actually look at something, let's say, a career mode where you could actually unlock a footballer that has a certain unique skills.
Is that not what they have it already?
Yeah, they have that already. But right now, those packs, which are actually really valuable right now, the FIFA packs, people actually find them very valuable and pay a whole lot to actually acquire them. Now you can now have them secured on the blockchain where you can now say, this belongs to this person. And that ownership that is attributed to this person, you don't check you're able to gauge the demand. Because demand is where the value comes from. If there are 1 million people that really want that FIFA pack, or let's say that footballer that was unlocked by this person playing this football career from this club to this club, and then that footballer got these skills, and somebody else wants a player with this pedigree, that is something that you can now say, okay, if there are 1 million people that want this, there's demand for it, and there's a high value for that. If there's no demand for it, because, just the same way 1 million people can generate such a footballer or such a pack on their game, the value comes from where the demand goes. And that's where you now get consensus. So when you come to something that you're going to talk about digital art, your ability to distribute or syndicate what you are actually doing, properly tell a story around what you're trying to create, and the techniques being used. And more better, if you're actually a professional, you are able to leverage the training which you actually got. Let's use an example. If somebody wants to just create an artwork, the prompt you're going to say is something like, create me an artwork. And it's going to generate an artwork. An artist could say, I would like to create an oil painting using this particular technique, drawn with this brush, to convey this. They could be very detailed, more than you that's just an inexperienced. You're going to have a very simple, shallow prompt, and then no matter how good you feel like you're good at creating those prompts, someone with training in that particular field is going to be able to look at these different artworks that are being created and say, this best matches the technique or styles which I'm actually telling it. So an untrained person, when you give it an instruction, it produces anything that you want. And you're just going to say, yeah, I like this. But a trained person is going to say, okay, this is an incredible quality, or this is an incredible piece of art.
So should artists be compensated, especially when their artworks are used to train AI?
Yes, I believe so. This is something.
Are they actually being compensated? Or
Okay, this is actually where it gets very blurry. They're not being compensated properly because there's so much drama around where does the data come from. When the AI is actually being trained, it's actually making copies of what it was given. And the trainers or the big data companies are coming out with the excuse of saying this is the same thing as just going online, learning how to read a book, and then, coming to get inspiration to write a book thanks to the fact that you read a book. That's the analogy they give. But this is actually really not right, because you see, the copyrights are meant to protect the intellectual work of people. And when we start looking at these new paradigms that are now emerging, and the excuses or the gaps or the flaws in the previous systems that we had, what I actually see happening is that we're going to have something like a 2 to 3 year window where we're going to have to sort out these challenges, the data that is being trained on, the model that is generating this data in likeness of a particular previous work. I mean, New York Times sued OpenAI for using their works. Getty Images also sued another AI company for actually using their works. So at the end of the day, I personally believe that the artists should be fairly compensated for their works. But at the same time, we must face the reality that there are gaps in the laws and regulations that exist across different geographical locations around the world. And we must then plug and, have an intellectual conversation around this discussions, because what led to the protections or the enforcement of rights previously were conversations that were had intelligently around fair use, compensation of people's efforts. So in this new era, we still just have to sit down and have an intelligent conversation around the same topic. We can't basically just assume that, the old way of attributing ownership, intellectual property, and copyright will be applicable in this new era. We are currently entering the fourth industrial revolution, and we must also adapt to this new era.
In cases like this, how do copyright laws differ globally regarding AI-generated content?
So like I said, the data which is being trained on has different regulations all over the world.
Oh, really?
Yes. I mentioned earlier that in Japan, there's permissive use for the data which you train the AI model on. So that permissive use means that any data that you publicly scrape, you can basically train the AI model on, and you can be sued in Japan. But it's not the same in the United Kingdom.
United Kingdom,
thank you very much. Fair use. You understand? There's something they call fair use. It's also applicable in Nigeria. Also, it's also
so
applicable.
Nigeria is fair use.
Yes, we also have the Fair Use Act. You get so. But the question is, what then describes what is fair use?
To what extent?
Thank you very much. So this is where the gap is now being introduced when they say that this is being used under a fair use copyright. So we must have that discussion and narrow it down, because there are windows of like areas where that gap can be exploited by these AI companies, because the regulations across different jurisdictions differ. But mind you, someone could train an AI model in a country where they have a better or conducive regulations, And after training that AI model, they introduce it into your own country. And when they introduce it into your own country, who then decides? I mean, they collect the data. They can collect the data from your country, go to another country, train the model, where it's actually regulated, and then after doing that, they come into your country and tell you this was actually done with fair use. So there are so many things that we must plug around this IP and copyright area.
Okay, looking forward, where do you see art and AI? Let's say the next 5 years, just to narrow it down to like 5 years.
NFTs. That's what I am going to, like the one word I'm going to say.
Speaking of NFTs, what's the originality in that?
They are non-fungible tokens. Now, recall, blockchains are digital ledgers which help you store information. And the Banksy, or let's say the Van Gogh paintings, or the Da Vinci paintings, they are susceptible to thefts. They can be destroyed. They can actually lose their, original painting or degrade over time. But when it comes to digital artworks, it remains the same. It's immutable. It's always going to be on the blockchain. And this artwork that is now secured on the blockchain by different technologies that you now have. If it's generated by an AI model and it's secured on the blockchain.
So you can actually sell AI generated artworks on the blockchain.
You can actually generate one right now on your phone and list it, put it on an NFT and list it on sale. It can easily be done in less than 10 minutes. The technology is already now there. Now, but the challenge is it's nestled within the Web3 or crypto community. So most times when you hear about NFTs, you feel like they're speculative trading and different, but the technology is still being developed. And that's what's going on in the crypto community and the Web3 community. They're developing the guardrails for this new age. AI is going to be run on blockchain technology. That is the vehicle for blockchain. So when you have those AI generated artworks now merging with blockchain, you're not going to have a whole lot of these discussions that we are having around provenance, copyright, and intellectual property coming to the table. But for right now, the first thing that has to be done is they are still in experimental stages. So being in experimental stages, you're still going to be hearing about non-fungible tokens on this blockchain and NFTs on this blockchain. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to tell you that this is actually provenance or information that will be stored on this. And this is going to be the future of art. Art is going digital. Even
if we like it or not.
We'll
still have the traditional art.
There's still art in different caves. There's still art still in the pyramids. That's the same way we're still going to have canvas works. Still available millennia to come. But the new form of expression is no longer going to be on the cave wall. It's no longer going to be on a canvas. It's going to be on a digital device.
And our conversation was on art, AI, and intellectual property. It was amazing having this conversation with Engineer Nzube Ndiokwelu, who is community lead Citra Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. We had a whole, if you're just joining us, please go back, revisit that conversation and catch up with us. The world is evolving and so are we. We'll go on a short break, and when we're back, we'll have our next conversation for the night. Stay with us.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.